I am Amanda, 32 years old, and I just discovered my sister Heather emptied my entire house down payment fund. $45,000 gone in a single transaction. 6 years of saving, working overtime, and sacrificing vacations vanished so she could buy a luxury car to impress her new boyfriend. When I confronted my parents expecting support, they sided with her. My dad actually said, "You can just save again. She needs this more than you." They had no idea that fund was tied directly to their mortgage. If you are watching this right now, I would love to know where you are viewing from. Take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this family betrayal. Trust me, you will want to stick around for what happens next. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in suburban Chicago. My parents, Robert and Elizabeth, were hard-working people who provided everything we needed, but luxury items were rare in our household. From an early age, I noticed how my sister Heather, 7 years younger than me, always seemed to get special treatment. Maybe it was because she was the baby of the family, or perhaps it was her outgoing personality that made people want to give her what she wanted. Whatever the reason, I learned to be self-sufficient while watching my sister receive endless support. During my college years, I struggled financially. Unlike Heather, who would later receive substantial help with her education, I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a full course load. My parents contributed what they could, but I still graduated with $28,000 in student loan debt. That experience shaped my financial mindset forever. I promised myself I would never again feel the stress of financial insecurity. After college, I secured a job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized company. The pay was decent but not extraordinary. I rented a modest 1-bedroom apartment and drove a reliable but aging Honda Civic. While my friends splurged on expensive dinners, designer clothes, and exotic vacations, I lived frugally and focused on my long-term goals. My dream was homeownership, a symbol of stability and success I had wanted since childhood. 6 years ago, I opened a dedicated savings account specifically for a house down payment. Every month, I automatically transferred 20% of my salary into this account. I picked up freelance marketing projects on weekends, adding that income directly to my house fund. When I received my annual bonus, it went straight into savings, no exceptions. Every dollar was a brick in the foundation of my future home. The sacrifices were substantial. I packed lunches instead of eating out. I shopped at thrift stores for clothes. My furniture was a mix of hand-me-downs and marketplace finds. When friends invited me on trips to Mexico or Europe, I declined despite how much I wanted to go. Dating was challenging because I was unwilling to compromise my financial goals for expensive outings. Some men found my frugality admirable, others called it excessive. I remained focused regardless. My relationship with my family remained close throughout these years. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were a weekly tradition. I attended all of Heather's dance recitals and later her college graduation. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and milestones together. I thought we had an unbreakable bond built on mutual respect and love. 3 years ago, I experienced a health scare that changed everything. What I thought was a persistent cold turned out to be pneumonia that rapidly developed into a dangerous infection. I was hospitalized for 9 days, including 3 in intensive care. During this frightening time, I realized I needed someone to have emergency access to my accounts in case decisions needed to be made while I was incapacitated. Heather had just graduated college with a degree in communications and was staying temporarily with our parents. She visited me daily in the hospital, bringing magazines, snacks, and updates from the outside world. Her kindness during this vulnerable time touched me deeply. When my financial advisor suggested designating a trusted person for emergency account access, Heather seemed the obvious choice. My parents were somewhat technologically challenged, and Heather was family after all. We visited the bank together after my recovery. I added her as an authorized user with specific limitations. The paperwork clearly stated this was for emergency purposes only. The bank manager, Thomas, explained the responsibilities to both of us, and Heather nodded solemnly, promising she understood the trust I was placing in her. I remember her exact words, "I would never touch your money unless it was literally life or death, Amanda." Meanwhile, Heather's own financial situation was perpetually chaotic. She bounced between jobs in public relations and marketing, never staying anywhere longer than a year. She accumulated credit card debt, buying designer clothes and taking spontaneous trips with friends. Whenever she hit a financial wall, our parents would inevitably come to her rescue. They paid off her credit cards twice that I know of, covered her rent during employment gaps, and even bought her a car when hers was repossessed due to missed payments. I never criticized these bailouts directly, but I did try to offer Heather advice on budgeting and financial planning. She would listen politely, promise to try harder, then continue her spending habits unchanged. Our parents explained her behavior as just how Heather is, and insisted she would figure things out eventually. The pattern continued for years, with no consequences ever sticking. 3 months ago, I received a promotion at work, increasing my salary by 15%. My house fund had grown to $45,800, enough for a substantial down payment in several neighborhoods I was considering. The timing felt perfect. The housing market in our area had stabilized, interest rates were reasonable, and I was ready to take the leap into homeownership. I connected with Rachel, a real estate agent recommended by a colleague. She was enthusiastic about helping me find the perfect starter home within my budget. We met for coffee to discuss my preferences and timeline. "With your savings and income, you are in an excellent position," Rachel said, reviewing my pre-approval letter from the bank. "We could start viewing properties as early as next week if you are ready." I remember feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was really happening. After years of sacrifice and planning, my dream was within reach. I called my parents that evening to share the news. "That is wonderful, honey," my mother said, though her tone lacked the enthusiasm I expected. "But are you sure you want to tie yourself down with a mortgage right now? You are still young." My father added, "Real estate can be a money pit. Have you considered all the maintenance costs?" Their reaction puzzled me, but I chalked it up to parental concern. I decided to forge ahead regardless. Rachel and I scheduled our first day of house hunting for the following Saturday. I spent hours online, researching neighborhoods, property taxes, and commute times. Every aspect of my plan was falling into place. Or so I thought. 2 days before my appointment with Rachel, I logged into my bank account to verify my funds for the mortgage broker. It was a routine check, something I had done countless times over the years. I expected to see my balance of $45,800, the result of 6 years of discipline and sacrifice. Instead, I saw $0 and 0 cents. My heart stopped. I blinked repeatedly, thinking there must be some mistake. I refreshed the page. The balance remained at 0. I logged out and logged back in. Still 0. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I called the bank customer service line with shaking hands. "Hello, this is Madison at First National Bank. How may I assist you today?" The customer service representative sounded cheerful, unaware she was about to confirm my worst nightmare. "This is Amanda Wilson," I said, my voice barely steady. "I need to know what happened to my savings account. The money is gone, all of it." Madison asked for my account information and security verification. After placing me on a brief hold, she returned with information that sent my world crashing down. "Miss Wilson, I see a withdrawal was made in person at our downtown branch 3 days ago for the full account balance of $45,800. The transaction was processed by our associate Kevin and approved with proper identification." "That is impossible," I said, my voice rising. "I did not make that withdrawal. Could it have been fraudulent?" "The withdrawal was made by an authorized user on your account, Heather Wilson." She presented proper identification and signed the withdrawal slip. I can see her signature on the scanned document. Heather, my sister. The person I had trusted with emergency access to my accounts. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. "This was not authorized by me," I said firmly. "That money was my house down payment. I need to see security footage and all documentation related to this withdrawal." Madison explained I would need to visit the branch in person to review such materials. I thanked her curtly and ended the call. For several minutes I sat frozen at my kitchen table trying to process what had happened. Then rage replaced shock. I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to the bank. The downtown branch manager Thomas remembered me from when I had added Heather to my account. He looked uncomfortable as he pulled up the transaction details. I remember specifically explaining that this was for emergency access only, Thomas said, reviewing the account notes. Unfortunately, as an authorized user, Miss Heather Wilson had legal access to make withdrawals. Can I see the security footage? I demanded. Thomas hesitated but eventually agreed. In a small office, he played the footage from 3 days prior. There was Heather smiling confidently at the teller, signing papers and walking out with a cashier's check for my entire house fund. She was wearing designer sunglasses pushed up on her head and a new-looking leather jacket I had never seen before. I felt physically ill. I need copies of all documentation related to this withdrawal, I told Thomas. This was unauthorized and I intend to pursue this matter fully. With a folder of documents and a copy of the security footage, I drove directly to Heather's apartment. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I rehearsed what to say, trying to imagine any possible explanation that could justify her actions. Heather lived in a trendy area of the city, in a building with far higher rent than she should have been able to afford on her entry-level PR salary. I had always assumed our parents were subsidizing her housing but never asked directly. I parked across the street and spotted something that made my blood boil further. A brand new Mercedes convertible with a giant red bow still attached to the hood. I stormed up to her third-floor apartment and pounded on the door. When Heather opened it, her expression shifted instantly from surprise to guilt. "Amanda, I was going to call you," she said, stepping back to let me in. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I demanded, throwing the bank documents on her coffee table. "Explain how you stole $45,000 from me, my entire house down payment." Heather glanced at the papers but didn't seem particularly concerned. She tucked her hair behind her ear and sighed. "I was going to tell you. It is just that everything happened so fast." "What happened fast? You stealing my money?" "No, meeting Nathan's family," she said, as if this explained everything. "Nathan Prescott, my new boyfriend. His parents are like seriously wealthy. Old money from Boston. They invited me to their summer home in the Hamptons, and I needed to make the right impression." She gestured toward the window, pointing at the Mercedes parked outside. "I could not show up driving my old Toyota. The Prescotts are all about appearances. This could be it for me, Amanda. Nathan could be the one." I stared at her, speechless. She had stolen my house fund to buy a luxury car to impress a boyfriend's family. "You stole my money," I finally managed to say. 6 years of savings, everything I worked for." Heather had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Do not be so dramatic. It is not stealing when you gave me access to the account. For emergencies only, not for you to buy a car." "This was an emergency to me," she replied with complete seriousness. "And honestly, Amanda, you are so good with money, you can save it again in no time. I needed this car now. This opportunity with Nathan will not come twice." I felt like I was in some bizarre alternate reality where my sister's dating life justified grand theft. "You need to return the money," I said firmly. "All of it. Today." Heather laughed nervously. "I cannot do that. The car is already purchased. Anyway, I talked to Mom and Dad about it last week, and they agreed this was the right move for me right now." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Wait, Mom and Dad knew about this before you took the money?" Heather nodded. "I told them about Nathan and his family, and how important making the right impression is. They understood completely." "And they told you it was okay to take my money?" I could barely form the words. "Well, they said you have always been so responsible with money, and I needed this chance more than you needed another year of saving. They said family helps family." I stood up, unable to stay in her presence any longer. "You are returning that money, Heather, one way or another." "Or what?" she asked, suddenly defensive. "The bank said it was perfectly legal. You made me an authorized user." "We will see about that," I said, heading for the door. "And we will see what Mom and Dad have to say directly to me about this." As I left, Heather called after me, "Amanda, do not make a big deal out of this. Family is supposed to support each other." I slammed the door behind me, got in my car and sat there shaking with rage and disbelief. Then I headed straight for my parents' house, determined to get to the bottom of their involvement in this betrayal. The 20-minute drive to my parents' suburban home gave me time to organize my thoughts. Surely there had been some misunderstanding. Perhaps Heather had manipulated them with half-truths or outright lies. My parents had always taught us about honesty and responsibility. They could not possibly have endorsed this theft. I pulled into their familiar driveway, noting the recent landscaping and new front door. My parents had recently completed an extensive kitchen renovation, something they had saved for over several years. They had been proud to show me the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances during our Sunday dinner just 2 weeks ago. My mother answered the door, her smile fading when she saw my expression. "Amanda, we were not expecting you today." "We need to talk," I said, walking past her into the living room. "Is Dad home?" "He is in his office, Robert," she called. "Amanda is here." My father emerged from his home office, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Amanda, everything okay?" "No," I said flatly. "Everything is not okay. Heather emptied my entire house down payment fund to buy herself a Mercedes." I watched their faces carefully. Instead of shock or outrage, I saw discomfort and avoidance. My father removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. My mother sat down on the sofa, smoothing her pants nervously. "And the worst part," I continued, "is that she claims you both knew about it beforehand and approved." A heavy silence filled the room. My father cleared his throat. "Now, Amanda, you need to understand the situation from all angles." That single sentence confirmed everything. The betrayal that had begun with my sister now extended to my parents as well. "What angles, Dad?" "The angle where my sister stole $45,000 from me. The angle where my own parents apparently gave her permission to do so." "She did not steal anything," my mother interjected. "You gave her access to that account years ago. For emergencies only, not to buy a luxury car to impress some guy she just met." My father sat down beside my mother, their united front making my stomach churn. "Amanda, you have always been so independent and capable. Financial success has come easily to you." "Easily," I nearly shouted. "I worked 2 jobs through college. I have saved for 6 years, living in a tiny apartment, driving a 15-year-old car, skipping vacations and nights out. There was nothing easy about it." "What your father means," my mother said in her placating tone, "is that you have always been good with money. You can save that amount again." "While Heather has struggled more in that area," my father added, "this opportunity with Nathan Prescott could change her life. His family has connections that could secure her future." I could not believe what I was hearing. So Heather gets to steal my money for a car she cannot afford to impress, a family she barely knows, and that is okay with you both. "We understand you are upset," my mother said. But Heather needed to make a good impression on Nathan's wealthy family. This could be her chance at a stable future. "What about my stable future? The house I was about to buy?" My father waved his hand dismissively. "Houses come and go. You can always find another one when you save up again." "Or you could find a husband with a nice house," my mother suggested with complete seriousness. "You are not getting any younger, Amanda." The casual sexism in her statement left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice again, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Did you know before she took the money? Did you actually tell her it was okay to take it?" My parents exchanged a glance that told me everything. "We discussed it as a family," my father said carefully. "A family minus me," I pointed out. "Heather came to us very upset about needing to make the right impression," my mother explained. "We suggested she ask you for a loan, but she said you would never understand how important this opportunity is. So, instead of calling me, you told her it was fine to just take it all." Another uncomfortable silence confirmed my worst suspicions. "We are family," my father finally said. "Family supports each other in times of need." And my need to buy a house after 6 years of saving was less important than Heather's need for a Mercedes. "You do not understand how these wealthy families operate," my mother said. "Appearances matter tremendously. Heather could not show up in her old car." The conversation was becoming increasingly surreal. I pulled out the bank statements I had brought with me. "Look at this. $45,800. Gone. My entire future." My father barely glanced at the papers. We know it seems like a lot right now, but in the big picture of life, it is just money. Just money. Would you say that if I had taken 45,000 from you? That is different, my mother said quickly. How? How is it different? We are your parents, my father said, as if that explained everything. I felt a cold clarity settling over me. You both think this is okay. You actually believe Heather had the right to take my money. We know you are upset now, my mother said. But you will get over it. Family is more important than money. My father reached for his wallet and pulled out a check. We want to help you start over. Here is $5,000 to begin your new house fund. I stared at the check in disbelief. $5,000, approximately 11% of what had been stolen from me, as if that would make everything okay. Are you serious right now? I asked, not touching the check. You think $5,000 fixes this betrayal? Do not be ungrateful, my mother said sharply. We do not have to give you anything. No, you do not, I agreed, standing up. Just like I did not have to work overtime for 6 years to save that money that Heather stole with your blessing. Amanda, you need to calm down and think about family loyalty, my father said sternly. Loyalty, I laughed bitterly. Where was your loyalty to me when you told Heather she could take my life savings? You are overreacting, my father insisted. This is about helping your sister secure a solid future. And what about my future? I asked, tears finally breaking through my anger. Did either of you think about that for even 1 second? My parents looked uncomfortable but unmoved. My mother stood and tried to hug me, but I stepped back. We love you both equally, she said, but sometimes one child needs more support than the other. And that child is always Heather, I replied. It has always been Heather. That is not fair, my father protested weakly. None of this is fair, I said, gathering my papers. I trusted my family and you all betrayed me. As I walked toward the door, my father called after me. Take the check, Amanda. It is a start. I turned back one last time. Keep your money. I will figure this out on my own like I always have. I left without another word, climbed into my car, and finally allowed myself to fully break down. Tears streamed down my face as I sat in my parents' driveway, the foundation of family trust completely shattered. Back in my apartment that evening, I moved through the rooms like a ghost. The space that had once felt like a temporary stepping stone to my real home now felt like a prison of shattered dreams. I had been so close to achieving my goal, only to have it ripped away by the people I trusted most. I canceled my appointment with Rachel, the real estate agent, unable to face telling her what had happened. She texted me later that evening, "Everything okay? Looking forward to showing you some great properties tomorrow." I replied with a brief message about a family emergency and promised to reschedule soon. The words felt hollow as I typed them. That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversations with Heather and my parents. Each recollection brought fresh waves of anger and grief. By morning, my emotions had evolved from shock to a deep aching sense of betrayal that settled in my chest like a physical weight. As I made coffee, memories flooded back unbidden. My 8th grade science fair project that my parents missed because Heather had a cold. My high school graduation party cut short because Heather was having friend drama that required immediate attention. My college graduation, where my accomplishment of summa cum laude was overshadowed by concern about Heather failing 2 classes that same semester. The pattern had always been there, but I had dismissed it, making excuses and minimizing my own needs. Family helps family. Family comes first. But apparently in my family some members came more first than others. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. I needed time to process what had happened and figure out my next steps. As I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bank statements and withdrawal slips, my phone rang. It was Rachel. "Amanda, is everything okay? I was concerned about your message." I hesitated, then decided I needed to talk to someone outside the situation. I told her everything, my voice breaking several times during the explanation. "Oh my God," Rachel said when I finished. "I cannot believe your sister would do that, and your parents supported her." "They knew beforehand," I confirmed. "They actually told her it was okay to take my money." That is beyond inappropriate, Rachel said firmly. That is your money that you worked hard for. Have you considered legal action? I do not know what options I have. The bank says the withdrawal was technically legal since I made her an authorized user. But there must be some recourse. Would you like me to put you in touch with an attorney friend of mine? She specializes in financial matters. I thanked Rachel for her support and accepted her offer to connect me with an attorney. After our call, I felt slightly less alone but still overwhelmed by the magnitude of the betrayal and the uncertain path forward. Later that afternoon, I began organizing my financial documents to prepare for the meeting with the attorney. As I sorted through papers, I came across a folder I had almost forgotten about. Inside were documents from 3 years earlier, when my parents had renovated their kitchen. I remembered now that they had asked me to be a guarantor on their home equity loan. At the time, it had seemed like a simple way to help them secure a better interest rate. I had signed the paperwork without much thought, happy to assist them as they had always assisted Heather. Reading through the documents now, I realized something I had overlooked before. As guarantor, I had agreed to be responsible for the loan if they defaulted. Their house was collateral, but my credit would be affected if anything went wrong. It had seemed like such a minimal risk at the time given my parents' reliability with finances. But now I wondered. I began searching through other documents looking for additional connections between our finances. In a folder marked tax documents, I found something unexpected. Papers relating to Heather's student loans showing my parents' house listed as collateral. They had apparently taken out a second mortgage to pay for her education, something they had never done for me. The more I dug, the more I discovered. My parents had co-signed multiple loans for Heather over the years, including the lease on her expensive apartment. They had leveraged their home and retirement accounts repeatedly to bail her out of financial troubles. A disturbing picture began to emerge. My financially responsible parents had overextended themselves considerably on Heather's behalf. Their comfortable retirement was far less secure than I had believed. And as guarantor on one of their loans, I was financially entangled in ways I had not fully appreciated. I spent the rest of the day researching, making calls, and putting together a complete picture of my family's financial interconnections. By evening, I had scheduled an appointment with Michael, a financial advisor recommended by my company's HR department. The following morning, I met with Michael at his office downtown. I brought all the documentation I had gathered and explained the situation in detail. "This is quite a complex web of financial entanglements," Michael said, reviewing the papers. "Your parents have made some risky financial decisions primarily to support your sister. And what are my options regarding the money she took from my account?" Michael leaned forward. "As an authorized user, your sister had legal access to those funds. However, the bank documents clearly show this was meant for emergency purposes only. You could potentially pursue this as fraud given that the authorization was for a specific limited purpose." Would I win such a case? It would be complicated, especially with family involved. But there is another angle to consider. He tapped the guarantor documents for my parents' home equity loan. Your financial well-being is now directly tied to your parents' ability to meet their obligations. If they default on this loan, you become responsible. And given how overextended they appear to be, that is a genuine risk. So what are you suggesting? You have leverage here that your family may not realize. Their financial security is interconnected with yours in ways they may not have considered when they encouraged your sister to take your money. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not just for recovering my money, but for establishing boundaries that my family had consistently violated. Michael helped me formulate a plan that was firm but fair, focused on resolving the situation without permanently damaging family relationships. "Remember," he said as our meeting concluded, "this is not about revenge. It is about justice and establishing healthy boundaries. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people who have become financially irresponsible is to stop enabling that behavior." I left his office with a clear plan and a renewed sense of purpose. The path forward would be difficult and uncomfortable, but for the first time in my life, I was ready to stand up for myself against my family's pattern of prioritizing Heather's needs above all else. That evening, I made 3 important phone calls. first to Thomas at the bank to discuss filing a formal report about the unauthorized use of my emergency access authorization. Second to my parents' mortgage company making an inquiry about the status of the loan I had guaranteed. And third to Jessica, the attorney Rachel had recommended to schedule a consultation for the following day. With each call, my confidence grew. I was no longer the accommodating daughter and sister who would sacrifice her own needs for family harmony. I was a woman taking control of her financial future and demanding the respect she deserved. The next morning, I met with Thomas at the bank, bringing all my documentation regarding the emergency authorization I had given Heather. I want to file an official report regarding fraudulent use of my account, I told him. The authorization I gave my sister was explicitly for emergency purposes only, which was noted in your records. Buying a luxury car does not constitute an emergency. Thomas looked uncomfortable. This is a sensitive situation given that she was an authorized user. I understand that, I replied firmly. But I want this officially documented. I also want to discuss the potential impact on my parents' home equity loan, for which I am a guarantor. This caught his attention. What about their loan? My understanding is that if they default, I become responsible. Given recent events, I am concerned about their financial stability and my own exposure. Thomas nodded slowly. Let me pull up those records as well. Over the next hour, we reviewed all the interconnected financial arrangements. Thomas became increasingly concerned as he saw the full picture. This is indeed troubling, he said finally. I will file this report regarding the unauthorized withdrawal and flag the potential risk factors for the guaranteed loan. The bank will likely want to review your parents' financial situation more closely given these developments. Thank you, I said. I would also like to discuss removing my sister as an authorized user and implementing additional security measures on my accounts. By the time I left the bank, the official wheels were in motion. My next stop was Jessica's law office, where I presented the same documentation and explained my situation in detail. This is a clear case of financial abuse, Jessica said after reviewing everything. While your sister had technical access to the account, the documented purpose was strictly for emergencies. Her actions, especially with your parents' encouragement, constitute a breach of fiduciary responsibility. What are my legal options? We can pursue this in several ways, Jessica explained. Civil litigation for fraud and misappropriation of funds is one avenue. Given the family dynamics, I would recommend starting with a formal demand letter outlining the facts, the legal violations, and the requested remedy. And if they refuse, then we escalate to court proceedings. But I suspect once your family understands the serious legal and financial consequences they are facing, particularly regarding their own mortgage and credit standing, they may reconsider their position. Jessica drafted a comprehensive demand letter while I waited. It detailed the unauthorized withdrawal, the documented emergency-only restriction, and the potential consequences if the money was not returned within 7 days. These consequences included legal action, credit reporting, and a formal investigation into my parents' financial arrangements with their mortgage lender. This strikes the right balance between firmness and family consideration, Jessica said, handing me the letter. It gives them a clear path to resolution while making the serious consequences unmistakable. I left her office with copies of the letter and a renewed sense of purpose. On my way home, my phone rang. It was my father, his voice tense and upset. Amanda, what is going on? We just got a call from our mortgage company about a review of our loan status. Did you contact them? Yes, I did, I replied calmly. I am the guarantor on that loan, which means I have both rights and responsibilities regarding its status. Why would you do that? Are you trying to cause problems for us? I am trying to protect myself, Dad. Something I apparently need to do since my own family thinks it is acceptable to take my life savings without permission. This is getting out of hand, he said, his voice rising. You need to stop this now before you damage this family permanently. I am not the one who damaged this family, I replied. That happened when you and Mom told Heather it was okay to steal my house fund. It was not stealing, and now you are threatening our home. I am not threatening anything. I am simply exercising my rights as a guarantor to understand my financial exposure. Given recent events, that seems prudent, don't you think? There was a long pause before my father spoke again. We need to talk about this as a family. Can you come over tonight? I will be there at 7, I agreed. And please make sure Heather is there too. Before the family meeting, I received an unexpected text from Rachel. Thought you might want to know your dream house just listed. The one in Oakwood neighborhood you mentioned loving. Hate to tell you with everything going on, but did not want you to miss it if things turn around quickly. Attached was a listing for a charming craftsman-style home, with a front porch and mature trees, exactly what I had described as my ideal first home. The timing felt like a cruel joke, but it also strengthened my resolve to reclaim what was rightfully mine. At 7 sharp, I arrived at my parents' house. My mother's eyes were red from crying, and my father looked like he had aged 10 years since I had last seen him. Heather sat on the couch, arms crossed defensively. Before we start, I said, placing Jessica's letter on the coffee table, I want you all to read this. They passed the letter between them, their expressions shifting from defensive to concerned to alarmed. You cannot be serious, Heather finally said. You would sue your own family. I do not want to, I replied honestly. But I will if necessary. That money represents 6 years of my life sacrifices I made while you continued to receive financial support from Mom and Dad. But the car is already purchased, my mother protested. The money is spent. Then Heather can return the car, I said simply. Or you can take out another loan against your house to replace my money. Either way, I expect the full amount returned within 7 days, as the letter states. Or what my father challenged. You will really put our house at risk, your childhood home. I did not create this situation, I reminded him. You did that when you told Heather she could take my money. But yes, I will follow through on everything outlined in that letter if necessary. The doorbell rang, interrupting our confrontation. My mother went to answer it, returning moments later with a young man I did not recognize. Amanda, this is Nathan, Heather said. My boyfriend. Nathan looked uncomfortable, glancing between us. I just came to return Heather's things, he said awkwardly. I did not realize you were having a family meeting. Nathan, wait, Heather said, rising quickly. We need to talk. I think you have said enough, he replied coldly. When I found out about the car where the money really came from, I was disgusted. My family values honesty and integrity, Heather, not theft and deception. He placed a small box on the side table. Your things from my apartment. Please do not contact me again. After Nathan left, Heather collapsed on the couch in tears. Now look what you have done. He broke up with me because of you. No, I said firmly. He broke up with you because you stole $45,000 from your sister. That was your choice, not mine. My father looked shell-shocked. Heather, you told us Nathan knew you were using Amanda's money with her permission. You said he was impressed by your financial independence. I had to say something, Heather sobbed. I needed that car to fit in with his family. And now you have a luxury car you cannot afford and no boyfriend, I observed. While I have no house fund and a family I cannot trust, nobody wins here. My mother began crying as well, the full consequences of their actions finally becoming clear. My father sat down heavily, the letter still clutched in his hand. What do you want us to do? He finally asked, his voice subdued. Exactly what the letter says, I replied. Return my money within 7 days, all of it. We do not have that kind of cash, my mother admitted, and the renovation maxed out our home equity. Then Heather needs to return the car, I said. It is that simple. I cannot, Heather wailed. There will be penalties and my credit will be ruined. That sounds like a personal problem, I replied, using the same dismissive tone they had all used about my lost house fund. Figure it out. For the first time, I saw genuine regret in their faces as the reality of the situation sank in. The financial house of cards they had built with Heather at the center was on the verge of collapse. And I was no longer willing to be the foundation holding it all together. The week that followed our confrontation was tense but transformative. My parents, faced with the serious financial and legal consequences outlined in Jessica's letter, finally began to understand the gravity of what they had enabled. 2 days after our meeting, my father called to tell me they were putting their house on the market. We discussed it extensively, he explained, his voice heavy with resignation. It is the only way we can repay you quickly and avoid legal issues. We can downsize to something more appropriate for this stage of our lives anyway. Dad, I do not want you to lose your home, I said, surprised by the extreme measure. I just want my money back. We realize that now, he replied. But this is about more than just the money. We have made a series of poor financial decisions primarily to support Heather without requiring responsibility from her. It is time we all faced reality. Later that same day, Heather called me sobbing about the car situation. The dealership says there will be a 30% restocking fee if I return it. That is almost $14,000. My credit will be destroyed. You should have thought about that before taking my money, I replied, maintaining my firm boundary. Actions have consequences, Heather. But what am I supposed to do? Mom and Dad are selling their house because of me. Everything is falling apart. For the first time, I heard genuine remorse in her voice, not just self-pity. This situation is difficult, I acknowledged, but it is resolvable if everyone takes responsibility for their part. The turning point came unexpectedly when my Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister, reached out to me. We had always been close, but I had not spoken to her about the current family crisis. Your mother told me what happened, Barbara said when we met for coffee. I want you to know that I completely support your position. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. Finally, a family member who understood. This pattern has existed in your family for decades, Barbara continued. Your grandparents did the same with your mother, always prioritizing her needs above mine. It created resentment that took years to heal. When I see it happening again with you and Heather, it breaks my heart. I never knew that, I said, surprised by this family history. Your mother promised she would not repeat the pattern with her own children, but habits are powerful things. What you are doing right now, standing up for yourself, is breaking a generational cycle of favoritism and enabling. It is necessary, though painful. Barbara's support strengthened my resolve to see this through, while maintaining the possibility of eventual reconciliation. She also offered practical help, agreeing to act as a neutral third party in family discussions moving forward. Meanwhile, the bank had frozen my parents' accounts pending an investigation into the potentially fraudulent transfer from my savings. Thomas called to inform me of this development. This is standard procedure once a fraud claim has been filed, he explained. However, given your good standing with us and your family's overall history, we may be able to work out a solution that minimizes damage to everyone involved. I appreciated his willingness to find a middle path. My goal is not to punish my family, I told him. It is to recover my money and establish proper boundaries. In that case, Thomas suggested, would you be open to a meeting with all parties to discuss a structured resolution? I agreed, and 2 days later we gathered in a conference room at the bank. My parents looked tired and subdued. Heather appeared to have been crying. Barbara sat beside me, a steady, supportive presence. Thomas presented a potential solution. Heather would return the car, accepting the restocking fee as a consequence of her actions. My parents would take out a personal loan using their excellent credit history to immediately repay my house fund. The bank would remove the fraud claim from their records once repayment was complete, preserving their credit standing. This approach allows for full restitution while minimizing long-term financial damage, Thomas explained. It also avoids legal proceedings that would further strain family relationships. There was silence as everyone considered the proposal. Finally, my father spoke. We accept these terms, he said quietly. Amanda deserves her money back, and we all need to face the consequences of our poor decisions. Heather nodded tearfully. I will return the car tomorrow. I am truly sorry, Amanda. I never thought about how hard you worked for that money. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Not just because I would recover my savings, but because my family was finally acknowledging the fundamental unfairness of what had occurred. There is one more thing, Barbara interjected. I believe this family needs professional financial counseling to address the patterns that led to this situation. I am willing to cover the cost of 6 months of sessions as my contribution to healing this family. Everyone agreed to this condition, which I had secretly hoped for, but had not felt I could demand. The meeting concluded with signed agreements and a tentative sense of resolution. 3 days later, Thomas called to confirm that the full amount of $45,800 had been deposited back into my account. Heather had returned the car, absorbing the significant restocking fee as her consequence. My parents had secured a personal loan with a reasonable repayment plan that would not require selling their house. That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at my bank balance on my laptop screen. The numbers represented more than just money recovered. They symbolized a fundamental shift in my family dynamic, a new respect for boundaries, and my own growth in standing up for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "That house in Oakwood is still available. The sellers had another offer fall through. Interested in seeing it tomorrow." I smiled and replied, "Absolutely, let us make this happen." 6 months have passed since that fateful day when I discovered my empty bank account. Today, I am standing in the kitchen of my new home in the Oakwood neighborhood, arranging flowers in a vase as I prepare for my housewarming party. The morning sunlight streams through the windows of this charming craftsman-style house, highlighting the original hardwood floors that first made me fall in love with the property. Rachel, who became not just my real estate agent but a true friend throughout this process, arrives early to help with preparations. "This place suits you perfectly," she says, setting a bottle of champagne on the counter. "How does it feel to be a homeowner?" "Surreal but wonderful," I reply, smiling. "Some days I still cannot believe I made it here, especially after everything that happened." The path to this moment was not without its challenges. After recovering my money, I moved quickly to secure this house before someone else could claim it. The closing process had its typical stresses, but compared to the family ordeal I had just navigated, dealing with inspections and paperwork seemed almost refreshingly straightforward. My relationship with my family has transformed in ways both painful and necessary. We maintain contact, but with new boundaries firmly in place. The weekly Sunday dinners have been replaced with monthly visits, which actually feel more genuine now that expectations have been recalibrated. Heather has perhaps changed the most. The car incident and Nathan's rejection served as powerful wake-up calls. She now works 2 jobs, one at a marketing firm during the day and bartending 3 nights a week. Every month, she sends me a small payment as additional restitution beyond the returned car funds, something she suggested herself. "I want to make this right," she told me during a difficult but honest conversation we had about a month after everything happened. "Not just the money, but the trust I broke." My parents have downsized not out of necessity but by choice. They sold their larger home and purchased a comfortable 2-bedroom condo closer to the city. The money they saved has bolstered their retirement accounts, which had been depleted by years of bailing out Heather. "We should have done this years ago," my mother admitted during their housewarming gathering. "We were holding on to space we did not need and enabling patterns that were not healthy for anyone." The family financial counseling that Barbara arranged has been transformative. Under the guidance of a skilled therapist who specializes in financial psychology, we have explored the deep-rooted beliefs and patterns that led to our crisis. My parents have acknowledged their role in creating an unbalanced family dynamic, and Heather has confronted her sense of entitlement. For my part, I have learned that setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships. My tendency to sacrifice my needs for family harmony was not sustainable or truly helpful to anyone in the long run. Beyond my family, I have built a network of supportive relationships that bring balance to my life. Rachel introduced me to her circle of friends, many of whom are attending my housewarming today. Jessica, the attorney who helped me stand up for myself, has become a valued mentor and confidant. The doorbell rings, interrupting my reflections. It is Barbara arriving with a beautiful houseplant. "This place is absolutely perfect for you," she says, giving me a warm hug. "I am so proud of how you handled everything." "I could not have done it without your support," I tell her sincerely. As more guests arrive, I find myself marveling at how this painful experience ultimately led to positive change. The betrayal forced me to confront unhealthy family dynamics that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. It pushed me to advocate for myself in ways I had never done before. My parents arrive next, bringing a handmade quilt as a housewarming gift. There is still some awkwardness between us, but also a new respect that was missing before. They tour the house with genuine interest, making no suggestions about how I should have chosen differently or comments about finding a husband to share it with. "You have created a beautiful home, Amanda," my father says, his voice carrying a note of pride that feels both unfamiliar and deeply validating. "You did this all on your own, and that is something to be proud of." Heather arrives last, looking more mature than I can ever remember seeing her. She is dressed simply without the designer labels she once prioritized. In her hands is a small wrapped package. "It is not much," she says nervously, "but I thought it might be meaningful." I open it to find a framed photo of the four of us from years ago, a family vacation when things were simpler. Alongside it is a handwritten letter that I will read later in private. "Thank you," I say, giving her a genuine hug. "I am glad you are here." As I look around at the gathering of family and friends in my new home, I realize that this house represents far more than a financial investment. It symbolizes my journey toward self-worth, healthy boundaries, and the courage to demand respect. The most valuable lesson I have learned is that true family supports your dreams, rather than taking from them. Love without respect is not really love at all. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling destructive patterns even when that feels like the harder path. I raise my glass to toast my guests, my heart full of gratitude for the difficult journey that led me here. To new beginnings, hard-earned wisdom, and the beauty of standing in your own truth. As the evening continues, filled with laughter and conversation, I feel a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The path forward is not perfect, but it is authentic, built on mutual respect, rather than obligation or patterns of favoritism. The journey to this moment was not what I expected, but perhaps it was exactly what I needed to truly come home to myself. I hope my story has resonated with some of you out there. Have you ever had to stand up to your family for what was right? How did you handle it? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If this story helped you in any way, please like and subscribe to hear more experiences like this one. And remember, sharing these stories helps others who might be going through similar situations feel less alone. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to stand in your truth, whatever that may be.